What's going on, guys? I'm coming to you today with the Arquitens class cruiser ship breakdown for Armada. Basically, I'm going to be breaking down this ship, kind of looking at how it fits into the game today. We can look at some stuff, some upgrades that didn't come with this, that have come out after the fact. So if you pick this up at Wave 5 and haven't gotten into Wave 6 yet, we can look at some things that maybe you can do with this ship. But I just absolutely love this ship. It's my favorite ship in the game right now. And I wasn't that crazy about it initially, but it has grown on me even more in recent times. So I'm going to talk about this ship. We're going to break down the two versions of it. I'm going to give you some sample ways that you might fly this ship. We're going to talk about the titles that come with this ship. And lastly, I'm going to conclude with the different commanders. And I'm going to kind of rank them based on how they help out this ship specifically. And it's only how they help this ship, not how they help an entire fleet that just might have this in them. So, with that being said, let's take a look. We have two versions. We have the Light Cruiser, which is the cheaper version, and then we have the Command Cruiser, which is the more expensive version, 54 and 59 points respectively. Really, the only upgrade difference is that we have the support team on the Command Cruiser, so that's actually, pretty nice to have that as an option. We do have 213 for Command Squadron Engineering and 223, so we also have one more squadron on the Command Cruiser, giving it a little bit of squadron capability. We've got a black die on the Light Cruiser, a blue die for flak on the Command Cruiser. Not a whole lot of difference there. Sometimes you want the more range, sometimes you prefer the better chance of getting a hit with the black die. Also, this ship has a black die on the front and back on the Light Cruiser, and the Command Cruiser has a blue die on the front and back, so a little better range on that one. And so you got a whole lot more on the Command Cruiser for only 5 more points, which is kind of nice. We have 5 hull on the ship. For a small ship, that's not half bad. And we also have 4 defense tokens, which is especially nice for an Imperial ship. We get 1 evade, 2 redirects, and the contain, which is pretty interesting. It's not bad. It's not bad at all when you have 5 hull. If you've got less than that, though, I wouldn't even think contain was really worthwhile, because usually you have a pretty good chance of just getting killed in one shot with all these small ships just flying around in the arcs of giant ships like Star Destroyers. So one of the other interesting things about this ship is that it has a very interesting movement. On all of its speeds, up to max of speed 3, it has 2 clicks on the last option, but no clicks anywhere else. So it pretty much always has to go straight and then kind of reorient itself for the next turn. So it makes flying this ship very, very different than flying other ships. I've talked about this before in some of my conga line videos, but this is a ship that definitely takes some getting used to when you're going to fly it, if you're not doing any fancy movement shenanigans. If you're going to fly it out of the box as is without special upgrades, you kind of have to have a plan that you're pretty much just going to go straight the whole time with little shimmies here and there. Of course, a nav command will give you an extra yaw, but that's not really enough to really make you turn around hard. So if you start out going the wrong way with this ship, you can find yourself in a bad spot. It's not easy to turn around. But I have become used to flying with this ship, and one of the things I think that if you're going to fly a couple of these ships is you really have to either start off pointing directly at the enemy and then kind of change it from there, or know right where they're heading and then plan to broadside them. Now, the good thing is this is a broadside ship. It's got 3 red dice on the left and right side, which makes it great. One of the first one of the first broadside ships for the Empire. I think the first dedicated broadside ship that we've seen, and it's just also our first TRC capable ship right out of the box, which is also really nice. So I'm a big fan of this ship. We have the officer slot. We have defensive retrofit, which is, in my personal opinion, a little unnecessary right now, considering the defensive options that we have in the game. That might change once Wave 7 and beyond come out, but at least as of where Wave 6 is all we have, defensive retrofits just aren't that attractive. There's some that we can use, and then we also have Turbolaser. So before I go into possible configurations, because none of the configurations that I'm going to show you are using the defensive retrofit, I'm not saying that they're awful to use, I'm just saying that I don't use them. I am going to take a look at some though. Basically, these are the 5 that we have right now. The ones that I don't like is I don't like redundant shields. For one, it's a modification, it's 8 points, it's the most expensive one. And it's just usually not that big of a deal. Redundant shields is not really that flashy of an upgrade anyway. You kind of have to be getting shot right away to get your, because at maximum, you know, you're gonna probably only get like 3 or 4 shields out of this thing, and that's if you're getting shot a lot. You just there's a hard limit to how much you can gain from this. Electronic countermeasures I also don't generally go for on this ship, because you don't have brace or scatter, so you don't have any of those really clutch ones. Granted, your evade is awfully nice at long range when somebody's attacking you with like little hits and then they happen to roll a double hit, and as well as other damage. It's nice to be able to cancel it. So ECM, you know, it's usable, it's just awfully expensive for kind of a card you're going to use just once in a while. Advanced projectors is alright, because you do have 2 shields everywhere, but it's only 2. You don't have that one side with 3 or 4, and so advanced projectors is okay, but again, these are expensive upgrades. The 2 that I would use if I were going to use them would be the 2 5s. First, reinforced blast doors came with this ship. The problem with reinforced blast doors is that you have to have 3 or more damage already on your ship, and then you have to end the turn that way. Typically, if you end up getting 3 or more damage on one of these guys, he's about to die anyway, and you may not survive the rest of the turn and get around to the beginning of the next ship phase. So I find reinforced blast doors is a better card for ships that have like 6, 7, 8 hull or more, because they're more likely to take multiple damage and still be around the next turn. So I think reinforced blast doors is one of those ships that there's a very, very good chance you could put this on here and then get completely destroyed before you can use it. Like maybe a ship gets some damage on you, but then the squadrons come around at the end and they finish you off. I hate the idea of putting an upgrade on a ship that you cannot use or that you end up not being able to use. Cluster bomb is a situational one, which I think is still nice. There are some configurations that will, or some scenarios we'll talk about where you may want to fly your ship, your Arquitens, like directly very, very close to the enemies. And in those cases, it's a great deterrent to keep, squadrons from shooting at you. Especially if it's a named squadron, like somebody with scatter, for example. So like a Tycho or a Shara Bay or a Suntir Fel or something like that. It's just an amazing way to make them just suffer damage, and it's not an attack, so they can't scatter. So you have a really good chance of getting at least 3 damage. So this is a great way to just one-shot a TIE fighter. And so just make sure that they don't attack you, and you have the option. So they're going to be like, oh, I don't know if I want to attack him. All right, I'll attack him with this one. And then maybe you say, all right, maybe I won't use it now. So it's every time after a squadron performs an attack, even if it kills you, you can then discard this card to roll 4 blue dice. And I like that even if you die, you still have the option of doing it. So it's a nice, and it's a card I wish I had a lot more of, because I would love to run a fleet with lots of these. It could be potentially very, very fun. But anyway, I hope they do these as like a seasonal promo, because I would love to get my hands on like 8 cluster bombs or something like that. I think it could be a lot of fun. Maybe not 8, maybe like 6. But overall, one of the advantages of this ship is that it's relatively cheap compared to the number of dice that it can roll at long range. So it's very dice cost efficient, and when you're adding defensive upgrades for a ship that I think should be staying at long range, you're really increasing the cost. I also want to look at Turbolaser slots a little bit here. I'm not going to go over every one, but I'm going to go over a couple that I like on this one. I really like Enhanced Armament. I think that one's great. It's expensive, but you're definitely capitalizing on your strengths. I think this one is the best overall, period. No arguments about it. Upgrade for this ship. However, it's also the most expensive. So for cheapest, dual Turbolaser turrets, fine. it's actually a good option if you don't have any other way to mitigate dice. So if you're not running somebody who's giving out tokens, like concentrate fire tokens, like if you don't have Tarkin, for example, or GR7, or I'm sorry, not GR75s, but Gozanti's handing out tokens, and you're not running Vader or something like that, this is a solid option. I also think XI7s are generally always good, but Turbolaser Reroute Circuits is the other one that's actually really good here. Turbolaser Reroute Circuits is great because, obviously, because you have the evade, and this is the first ship that has both Turbolaser and evade naturally built into it for the Empire, so it's naturally a great fit. A little better now than it was before, not directly but by proxy, because you had the CR90 that used to use Turbolaser Reroute Circuits, and they changed Turbolaser Reroute Circuits to where you have to exhaust the card. It used to just be you could just spend a token, so you could do it twice. So if you had 2 attacks, you could do it twice. That was harder for this ship because you generally didn't want to do it twice. But now it takes the choice out of it. You can only do it once, so you're not necessarily stuck, permanently losing your evade for one attack. The reason I say it makes it better is because the comparison was against the CR90 on the Rebel side, and they had 2 evades, so they could do it for more than one attack, and they always seemed like they're better. Now it feels like the playing field is a little bit more even. Slaved turrets is another option you might want to think about. There's a lot of ways depending on how you're going to fly your fleet. If you have kind of a plan on how you want to fly it, slaved turrets is a solid option. It's cost effective, and it can be about the same as enhanced armament, but you're also restricting yourself to only being able to attack once. So I've done it before. I'm not a huge fan of slaved turrets, but one of the ways I have done slaved turrets is if I'm running only Arquitens, when I'm running like a 5 Arquitens fleet and I have to have my commander on one of them, I'll put slaved turrets on that one. The reason being is that one I know is always going to be farthest from the enemy ships and always generally have only one shot at best, and it's a way for me to save 4 points as opposed to using enhanced armament. We have also seen quad battery turrets come out with Wave 6. While this one can seem attractive, I am not the biggest fan of it unless you're also running the Inquisitor or something else to really help you out. See, my initial plan was to run a bunch of quad battery turrets on a bunch of Arquitens and just wait for somebody to fly into me and then have them, because I had long range and I could roll blue dice at long range, potentially getting an accuracy and making my dice more powerful. The problem that I ran into is that everybody else would just slow down right before they got into my firing range, and then it didn't end up working. And there's a lot of times with a speed 3 ship you're tempted to speed up. I think quad battery turrets are generally best on a ship that can only go 1 or 2, because statistically you're probably just more likely to end up at a lower speed than your opponents. I'm not completely sold on this particular upgrade yet. So for this ship, there are probably some ways you could do it. Maybe on the command cruiser with engine techs and you're staying around speed 1. So there's that option, but I'm not, I'm just not super crazy about quad battery turrets. Let's move past the Turbolaser slot, and we're going to look at some builds. So one build you might see is the Arquitens class command cruiser. This is the blue one. This is the one I don't fly as often because it ends up being more expensive. Not only is it 5 points more expensive, but that support team is going to be more expensive. But this is a great way, if you're only going to fly one, this is a real fun way to do it, because you can potentially make this ship, going from having one of the strangest maneuver options to have one of the best maneuver options in the game. So also I decided that we'd go ahead and give it Captain Nita and make it an easier Turbolaser reroute circuit option. So now we'll have 2 evades, and so now we can shoot our TRC and also have the evade left to spend without having to lose anything. It just makes life a little bit easier, makes us a little bit more survivable. So why else are we running engine techs on this thing? Well, one of the things we can do, if we're at speed 3, for example, we can do a nav command. So again, we don't have to concentrate fire because we've got, we're going to have a double, right? So we don't have to necessarily concentrate fire every turn if we've got the Turbolaser reroute circuits. And it makes nav a lot more attractive on a ship like this, because I can now take a 1 yaw at the second speed. And if I have Moff Jerjerrod as my commander, let's just say I had Jerjerrod as my commander. Well, now I can do a 2-1-2, and then 2 again for engine techs, which is you can almost do a complete 180 by doing something like this, which is almost, not exactly a full 180, but it gives you such incredible maneuverability. It's absolutely fantastic and very fun, very, very fun to put down. Again, you don't need NITA and TRC with something like that. I just thought it would be a nice complementary. You can run in different combinations of this, but it's very fun to be able to do that. And this could potentially be an option where you might want to, if you're feeling froggy, you might want to try quad battery turrets with something like this, because this allows you to slow down to speed 1. With you're doing more nav stuff, so you might want to slow down. You could even slow down to speed 0, which I almost never recommend, but if you gotta get that shot, maybe slow down to speed 0. But then again, if you do that, you won't be able to trigger engine techs, because you won't be actually executing a maneuver to be able to trigger engine techs. So keep that in mind when you're trying to be super fancy and slowing down to speed 0. It's only going to get you one shot, and you're probably going to die. But that's a fun way to run it. Engine tech's really, really good on the command cruiser. There's and then you've got other options for the support team, but I think that's the best one. Coming up is one of the ways I like to run the Arquitens. I like to run the light cruiser most often, because, like I said, the enhanced armament is my favorite Turbolaser upgrade for this ship. It is just the best as it applies to the way I fly it. But I would argue with you all day and all night that it is the best upgrade for the ship. Maybe not the best cost to value ratio, but still the best as far as what it does, the output of this thing, because you're taking your biggest strength, that 3 dice on the side, getting 1 more every single turn, maybe 2 more, especially if you can fly right up the middle, which the last time I flew them I was actually able to do that, which was great. But you're flying right up the middle, and then with a concentrate fire, now all of a sudden this little ship is throwing out 5 dice at long range, coming out the side, which is fantastic. 5 dice is more than an Imperial Star Destroyer at long range. I mean, assuming they didn't do a concentrate fire, because usually Imperial Star Destroyers tend to do things like navigation commands. So this is a lot of dice that you're able to roll, and I like that. Now, the Intel Officer is optional, but it does make it even more offensive. It makes it a really, really potent shot at long range, especially if you're going up against an Imperial Star Destroyer, and you say, fine, oh, I see. You even if I were to accuracy your brace, well, you have electronic countermeasures equipped, so you could still use your brace. Well, I'll just go ahead and Intel Officer your brace as I roll, 2 doubles, a crit, and a hit, and you can even have a blank in there. It's still, that's still a ton of damage. So what are you gonna do? And by the way, this is only, this is less than 75 points worth of ship, and I've got like 4 or 5 more of them. What are you going to do? So it forces somebody into some tough choices. I do very much like the Intel Officer, but it's not mandatory. And if you're trying to save points, you can just go like that. That's only 64. This is one of the ways I most often run the Arquitens, is just enhanced armament on a light cruiser. I have also done a couple of times with the Intel Officer, but I really like that method. So let's talk about the titles. So we've got a couple of titles. First, I want to talk about the Centaur. So the Centaur title says, when another friendly ship resolves a squadron command, up to 2 of the squadrons it activates can be at close to medium range of you. So this is basically Relay, but from a ship. It's slightly different though, because Relay has a number after it. Now, granted, this one is 2, but it also Relay is up to distance 3, whereas this is close to medium range. And while those are very close, they're not actually identical. I think it's like 2 or 3 millimeters difference. Not like that's a big deal, but for purposes of being on the internet, somebody's going to correct me if I say that they're the same. So technically, they're not exactly the same, but they're awfully, awfully close. So for a 3-point title, it's not bad, but I'll be honest with you. Both of the titles really, I don't use them. They don't seem that appealing to me. The problem I have with this title, at a glance, this is a ship that tends to work best at long range. So this title is one that kind of makes its best use if you're putting the ship closer to enemy ships, and it kind of, and so that alone makes it me not a big fan of it. There are still ways to do it, like if you send this ship let's say after hunting down an enemy flotilla that has escaped and is using relay against your own guys, you can send some fighters with it, and it can serve as relay for them. If this ship is flying around collecting objectives and you need a fighter escort, but you need to make sure you're doing nav, and that's kind of why I have it on the command cruiser, because maybe you would run center core with an engine tech's command cruiser. And so that this guy's going to be doing nav. You can have your other ships, for example, be doing the command, squadron command. So you have options there, but they seem like such corner cases, and you're not always going to know that that's what you're going to need to do until the game develops into that. So it seems just like you're planning for a very niche kind of scenario. The other thing you can do with center core is just fly them directly at the enemy, and but it's not the type of ship that's tanky enough to be flown directly at the enemy. So that's and if you're going to do that, maybe you go with the black dice version. Still, I'm not a big fan of center core because you've got something that does that already and way better, and that's that's the Lambda. The only other thing I can think is if you're completely maxed on squadrons and you don't only have enough room for one Lambda, it might just be a way for you to get more TIE fighters in there or more attacking squadrons. Although granted, the Lambda's pretty good at attacking other squadrons, and it's certainly the same against ships as TIE fighters. So maybe it's a way for you to get more relay without having to run 2 Lambdas, but running 2 Lambdas is actually a pretty good idea, and that's only if you have activation 4 ships. Again, just such a weird scenario of things that would cause you to maybe want to use this. I'm not seeing it, but maybe we'll see it eventually. Maybe there's something that's going to block relay at some point. I know a lot of people have been complaining about relay. So if you're watching this like a year from now and you're saying, hey, well, they came out with something that blocks relay, well, then the value of this title will go up significantly. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. But that's the caveat I'm throwing out there. Maybe this will get better in time, and that might be kind of cool. I would like to have a good reason to fly this title. I just don't right now. All right, next up, Hand of Justice. This one is an interesting one, to say the least. So this one says, before you reveal a command, you may exhaust this card to choose another friendly ship at distance 1 to 5 and ready one of its defense tokens. So this is I would say the better title. For one, it's 1 point more expensive, but it's also a little bit harder to use perfectly. When this came out, the obvious first thing I thought of was running this with Turbolaser reroute circuits, and that I can run 2 Arquitens. I can have one shoot first, spend its evade, and then I can have this Arquitens activate, ready the other guy's evade, and then this guy shoots. But the problem that when trying to do that is that the other person doesn't bother shooting that other ship that just readied its evade. What ends up happening is now they shoot this guy because this guy's already spent his evade. It's assuming they're both running Turbolaser reroute circuits. The better usage for it is if you have him kind of in the back of your other Arquitens or other ships, and the other ships take fire first and have to spend their defense tokens for defense. Imagine that. This can ready them again. It seems like it works best with ships that can spend defense tokens outside of defense. So again, Turbolaser reroute circuits, or if you're running Darth Vader, maybe your ISD got hit got hit a whole bunch of times, had to spend both redirects, brace, and contain, and isn't gonna want to sacrifice any of those to reroll attack with Darth Vader. This can ready one of them, so you can spend it again. What I would do if I were going to run maybe 2 Arquitens, I would give this one probably, where is he? Where is my little guy here? Captain Nita. There we go. I went right past him. I'd give him Captain Nita and Turbolaser reroute circuits, and I'd give the other one Turbolaser reroute circuits. So this way, other Arquitens goes first, can shoot Turbolaser reroute circuits, then this one can. Basically, it kind of gives them both effectively 2 evades, because this one doesn't need it, because he'll have 2, and then the other one won't need it because they can refresh through Hand of Justice. So I'm going to talk about the roles that this ship can perform, and it's pretty much an attacker, but it can do a little bit of support, but barely. And the reason I say support is because these 2 titles do give it some support ability. Although granted, like I said before, I'm not a big fan of the titles, and at least as it stands right now, I don't think they're that great, so I wouldn't consider this a support ship at all. I consider this primarily an attacker. But these 2 titles do have the ability to expand as the game grows. If different types of defense tokens come out that do more and awesome things, this title will get better. If new cards like Turbolaser reroute circuits, for example, allow you to spend defense tokens to do more awesome things, this title will get better. If relay ever becomes blocked, then this title will become better. Or if new squadrons come out that are really, really deadly to squadrons that have heavy, so basically anything to come out and counter a lambda, for example, this title will get better. So there's that. But primarily it's an attacker. It can be a flanker. Especially with the command cruiser, it can flank really well. It's got, it can keep its side pointed to you, so it doesn't ever have to fly directly at you, and still it'll always have that great broadside shot, which is why I think the biggest strength of this ship is that it doesn't have to point itself right at you. It can keep flying away from you, and then still, then turn at that, it can do blank, straight, and then turn. So it still flew straight away from you, and then turned and pointed its tremendous side arc right at you. So it's just amazing for that. But also it's just a broadside, so you don't necessarily have to flank. You can just have a whole line of these in a conga line. And if you've seen any of my conga line videos, I like to fly multiple Arquitens, all with the same side pointed towards the enemy, and and then just say, come on in. You can't fly against their broadsides, because you're going to have like 4 or 5 really big hits coming at you, and so it's too much for almost anything to take. So and also the fact that you move in, then we're going to shoot you and then fly away. So then you're not going to have us in your close range next turn too. So it's very good as a broadside or a flanker, just very, very good attack ship. Next I want to talk about commanders. So we're going to, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to rank all the commanders in order of how well they benefit this ship. And this isn't to say that I think they're bad commanders or great commanders or whatever. It's just really how well they benefit the Arquitens. So at the last place is going to be Constantine. Constantine does nothing for this ship because it's a small ship. That's basically all there is. That's not to say that you couldn't use Constantine in a fleet that has an Arquitens, but Constantine only works when you have large or medium ships, so he really doesn't do anything to help out small ships. So, that's a no-brainer. Next up is going to be Sloane. Sloane is, she's just not particularly strong with this ship because this ship doesn't really excel as a carrier. Granted, the command ship does have squadron value of 2. That's not enough for me to consider it a carrier. Doesn't really do a whole lot with squadrons. Doesn't have titles that really help it as a carrier. It only has titles that help other ships that are carriers. Granted, there is a potential use for Sloane using this ship, but this is not the strength, and you kind of want to, I'm kind of gearing this based on their strengths, and Sloane is a very kind of a corner case in which she would be useful specifically with this ship. Next up is going to be Ozzel. So Ozzel's all right. He's just not quite enough. I think Ozzel's best on a ship that can go speed 4. Speed 3 still works. You can go from 3 to 1, you can go from 2 to 0, from 1 to 3. You can definitely change it up, and there are times where that's going to be very, very useful. If you're running something like a conga line and you want all of your Arquitens to start out and just immediately go down to speed 0, it does give you the option to jump up to speed 2 once the enemy starts getting close to you, and then surprise them with that type of movement. Also, sometimes you just really need to move a little bit faster. One of the problems that I run into sometimes when flying many Arquitens is I start them all going sideways, and I have to keep them kind of close together to keep that hitbox, that kill zone, relatively tight. And at certain points when we get into having to turn, or when obstacles come into play, sometimes you run the risk of bumping into each other and causing a domino effect, and having Ozzel can kind of eliminate that. If everybody's at speed 1 and you do a nav and there's no way I'm not going to be able to hit him, well then I can just instead increase to speed 3, and oh, by the way, I did a nav command, so now I can I can get an extra click anywhere I want in there from at speed 1 or 2, or eventually, or it makes a conga line that's moving at speed 2 be able to stop completely. And you can do this with tokens as well. You don't have to necessarily do the command on your dial. So Ozzel's got some use. I just don't see him as being like tremendously strong. Like Maydeen would be better if Maydeen made the transition over to the Imperial side. He would be a little bit better, I think, because the extra yaw would be a little bit more beneficial for most people. Although I'm kind of liking the whole let's just go straight and turn. I like that because I've grown very comfortable with it. But that's my own personal thing. But yeah, there's Ozzel. Next up beyond that is Screed. Screed is going to be better with the light cruiser because of the black die. And the funny thing is, it surprises me just how often I actually get to use the black dice on the light cruiser. He's not particularly great on the command cruiser, but he's not terrible. And if you are running, if you're throwing enough dice, you're going to probably, you may end up getting basically 2 blank reds, and then Screed is useful for that. But primarily he's going to be really good for this, especially if you spend a concentrate fire on a front shot. When you do get a double arc, you can roll 2 reds and a black, and if one of those reds isn't perfect, you can get a double, the hit crit out of the black die. Pretty nice. Another thing that you can do too is if you have to do you can't do it against squadrons, so never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. I haven't run Screed in a while because he was great for a while, but I just haven't been running him lately, and I probably need to revisit him soon. He just feels like he's kind of gotten washed away in the wake of better commanders lately. But with black dice, he still has potential. I do like him on black dice ships. I think I generally prefer Vader over Screed, and I feel like Vader completely trumped Screed, but he's cheap, and that's another thing that gives him some benefit. But I think they're also the other reason I end up getting to use the front arcs on these guys so much is because, like I said, the side arc becomes really the kill zone, and the only way to kind of approach these guys without getting shredded in the approach is to approach from the front or the back. So there are a lot of times where people move in and end in my front or rear zone before I've even activated, and and they have to come in fast, and they end up coming in, and a lot of times I get those front and rear shots more so than any other ship that also has black dice. People just put themselves right there because they think, oh, 1 black die is not a big deal, but then I always have concentrate fire lined up so I can roll 2 black dice, no problem. So yeah, so and earlier I said roll 2 red and 1 black. No, forget that. Always roll another black, especially when you have Screed, because all you need is one of those to be the hit crit. Then you spend the red, and yeah, you got 4 damage out the front. Beautiful stuff at close range. Whew. All right, so that's Screed. Let's keep going, climbing up the list. Up next is Tarkin. Tarkin's somebody I would not have thought of to be great with this ship, but there's a couple of different ways. It's nice to be able to give out nav tokens to ships, especially if you're running command cruisers. But with a small ship with a command value of 2 works, because you can definitely stockpile 1 and use 1 each turn. He gives you the ability to get some concentrate fire tokens on there, so you can get your reroll that way, but you can also get yourself some engineering, and with a value of 3, an engineering token does get you a shield back, so that much is nice, or to transfer too. So if you've lost both of your side shields, you can take some from the other side, just transfer them over for 2 points. But it does work with Tarkin. I've actually run a Corellian conflict where I was not going to want to use Tarkin, but it worked. It definitely worked, and it was because if you're running the campaign, you can't duplicate. So people had already taken all the guys that I wanted to use, so I kind of got stuck using Tarkin, and he worked fairly well. It wasn't bad at all. And one of the things I liked about it, because I was running all light cruisers, is that I had squadrons, and I just decided, well, heck, I don't need to build in any squadron support. I can just have Tarkin give out a squadron command once or twice a game, and then all of my Arquitens can each activate one squadron. And since that's the same as them doing a squadron command anyway, I found that to actually be one of those hidden strengths of Tarkin, is taking a ship that I would normally never do a squadron command on, and being able to make each one of them kind of do their concentrate fire and have a squadron command. So it was nice for the builds that I've flown with it. Tarkin's kind of solid, but he's not terribly weak. And generally, you kind of take Tarkin when you have a lot of ships that have three command or so, but you generally don't take Tarkin when you have a whole bunch of ships with one command. So this one being in the middle kind of puts Tarkin pretty close to the middle. So yeah. Next up is Tag. So Tag is kind of obvious here. I think this is a ship that really relies kind of heavily on its evade, and because it wants to stay at long range, the evade is the only way it has to cancel damage. But it also is a really good platform for the Turbolaser reroute circuits, so it's very, very likely that you will find yourself losing your evade if you have TRC. You can also very, very likely find yourself losing that evade if you are the first ship that your opponents can shoot at and they hit you with all their ships. So he's a way for you to get that evade back, and then potentially something else in the later rounds. But if you're running Tag, it's a great opportunity to run TRC on these guys and not have to think twice about losing your evade, because you're going to get it back. So that's fun. So he definitely he strengthens one of the strengths of this ship, and also weakens or helps out one of their shortcomings. So I think he gives them kind of two benefits there. So I like Tag for this ship. Now we're getting into the top three. And number 3 is Mahdi. Mahdi's great all around. I don't really even have to justify why Mahdi is on this list, because he works for everybody. But it's nice seeing 6 hull ships here. It's it makes them very cool, because that means they can generally take 10 damage in a single or 9 damage in a single attack and still survive. Because if you redirect, 2 to a side, 2 to another side, and then but I just do like having that extra hull. It's also another reason I think is because when I'm running Arquitens, I tend to run a lot of them. So it's extra hull all around. So so everybody gets it. So I do like that. It really does. It stinks because when I have a conga line too, when people gang up, they tend to concentrate fire on the lead ship or the rear ship, depending on which angle they come in from. And if it's the rear ship, it's hard because I usually can't activate that ship too early, otherwise it's going to bump in and hit my other ships and cause extra damage and everything. And I just like not to have to lose a ship before I've activated it. So Mahdi's all around good. Next up is number 2, Jerjerrod. Jerjerrod is so good. He comes with this ship. He helps a lot of the Empire's ships, and he's fantastic. He's just really, really, really good. I don't think I need to really sell you on Jerjerrod. But he definitely, this is one of the ship's biggest weaknesses is movement. But I really, really love him with the command cruiser and engine techs. We talked about that already. I talked about engine techs already. I kind of told you about how much you can do, almost a complete 180 if you do a nav command and trigger engine techs and take a damage with Jerjerrod. That damage can go to shields, and you have shields all around. And in most of your games, there's going to be one side that's not facing any enemies, and so that's where you put your damage. And you don't do it if you don't need to, but boy, when you have the ability to do it, it's really, really nice. So Jerjerrod, he works on all versions of this ship, but I think he works best on a command cruiser with engine techs. But yeah, he's super fun, super cool. On to the number 1, and if you haven't guessed by now, it is Darth Vader. Love Darth Vader. If there's one thing I really, really, really don't like is having that Star Destroyer that's only got like 3 health left, and I get to shoot with Arquitens on it, and he's got no shields left, and his brace is already spent, and I roll 4 blank red dice. or 1 damage and then 3 blank red dice or something like that, or whatever. There's nothing I hate worse than that. And Vader gives all of your ships a really, like, one of the best dice mitigation options in the game. Well, here's a ship. Red dice need the rerolls more than anything else, because they're most likely to be garbage. So the red dice really need it. Vader does it for every die, as long as it's against a ship, because you can use it on those black dice too at close range, which is another reason why I like this better than Screed, because you can potentially have all your dice hit and you don't have to spend a die to do it. Now the disadvantage here is that you have to spend one of your defense tokens, but this ship is made for that because it's got 4 defense tokens. So when you're at long range and if you've got all your shields up, maybe you spend one of your redirects, or maybe you spend your contain. And when you're at close range, maybe you spend your evade. Again, not if you're running TRC, but if you're running, that's another reason why I like enhanced armament the best also, because I don't have to spend something for it. But yes, Vader on a bunch of Arquitens class light cruisers with enhanced armament is my fleet of choice for this game. He's just super strong with these guys, because you get so many dice and it costs you relatively so little to be able to mitigate them all. I mean, red dice don't always seem that crazy, but when you can reroll, you have a really good chance of getting 1 or more double hits into potentially a 5 dice side attack. It gives me the freedom to just do concentrate fire all I want. Their arc is big enough where I generally don't have to worry about spending navs to ensure I have somebody in arc. As long as you've set up the right way, and the enemy, and especially if you're going second player, or even if you're first player and you're picking objectives that are gonna kind of ensure that the battle happens over a certain area, allows you to kind of create a wide circle around the area, so you won't have to worry about nav. Engineering, I don't really have to worry about engineering much, especially since I'm staying at long range. Squadrons, I don't really count on the Arquitens being the squadron activation ships, so if I'm running a lot of Arquitens, I might go with rogues. So I really just like to go with concentrate fire and then enhanced armament, and I'm rolling 5 red dice out of all of my ships, maybe 9 red dice if I happen to have double arc, if I send one up the middle, or if they split their forces up. And then Vader can reroll for both shots too. You can get obscene damage out of these things. And this is one of those reasons why, after flying a bunch of Arquitens with Vader, I just wonder if I'm ever going to fly large ships again. I don't even know if the Thrawn expansion is going to sway me from my tremendous love for the Arquitens class light cruiser with Vader and enhanced armament. I mean, it's just really powerful. So let me know what you think, guys. This is my favorite ship in the game. And this is the last of the Wave 5 ship breakdowns. Wave 6 will probably be coming. I may want to wait until Wave 7 comes out before I break down Wave 6, but that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you didn't know already, I'm doing another giveaway. All you have to do is a $20 Cool Stuff gift card. The only thing you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on one of my videos. So let me know what you think, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and check out some of my streams of Star Wars Battlefront 2. I've been doing some of that. It's a really fun game. It's got Arquitens in it. You can defend them, or if you're rebels, you can try and blow them up, and they're shooting, and there's got CR-90s, Corellian Corvettes flying around too, and Star Destroyers and Mon Calamaris, and you can fly X-Wings, Y-Wings, A-Wings, TIE Interceptors, TIE Fighters, TIE Bombers. I'm loving Battlefront 2 so far. So check out my streams of that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.